Anansi's Web of Deceit. Long ago, before the world knew Anansi as a spider, he was a cunning, clever trickster, known for weaving tales and schemes to outwit the gods, spirits, and his fellow men. In a village surrounded by dense forests, Anansi lived as a storyteller, using his words to charm, deceive, and manipulate. His stories were his web, intricate and dangerous, trapping both the foolish and the wise alike. Scene 1. Anansi's hunger for power. Anansi's hunger for power grew with every victory. His tricks were legendary. He could outwit the strongest warrior and make fools of even the wisest elders. One day, his greed led him to a dangerous ambition, to possess all the stories of the world, which were at that time owned by Niam, the sky god. Anansi, standing under a giant baobab tree, looked up at the sky, where Niam's palace hovered in the clouds. "If I own all the stories, I will control the hearts and minds of all people," Anansi muttered to himself. His eyes gleamed with the thrill of his newest scheme. But gaining control of the stories would not be easy. Niam was no fool. He demanded an impossible price for the stories. Anansi must bring him Osebo the leopard, Mmoboro the hornet, and Onini the great python, 3 of the most feared creatures in the land. Scene 2. The trap for Osebo. Anansi knew he couldn't overpower Osebo the leopard by strength alone. But cunning? That was Anansi's gift. One evening, Anansi dug a deep pit in the middle of a forest path where Osebo often prowled. He covered it with leaves and branches, making it look like solid ground. Then he sat in a tree waiting. Just as the moonlight filtered through the leaves, Osebo came walking down the path, his sleek body moving silently through the jungle. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath him, and he fell into the pit. Osebo roared in anger, but Anansi leaned over the edge of the pit, smiling. "Ah, Osebo," Anansi said, "you look uncomfortable. Let me help you out." Osebo growled, "Why would you help me, Trickster?" "Oh, no tricks today, my friend. I merely want to see you free. But first, you must allow me to tie this vine around you to pull you up." Desperate, Osebo agreed. As soon as Anansi had tied the vine around him, he secured Osebo tightly, wrapped him like a prize, and took him to Niam. Niam smiled, pleased but not yet willing to surrender the stories. 2 more, Anansi. Scene 3. The sting of the hornet. Next, Anansi turned his attention to Mmoboro the hornet, whose sting was feared throughout the land. One day, when the sun was scorching hot, Anansi filled a calabash with water and poured some over his head, pretending to bathe under a tree where Mmoboro's nest hung high. When the hornets buzzed around him curiously, Anansi called out, "Oh, such terrible rain! Have you seen this storm?" The hornets, confused, asked, "Rain? There is no storm." "It's coming," Anansi said urgently. "Quick, take refuge in this calabash before you drown." In their panic, the hornets believed him and swarmed into the calabash for protection. Anansi quickly sealed it and delivered it to Niam. 2 down, 1 to go. Scene 4. The wisdom of the python. Onini the python was the last of Niam's demands. Anansi pondered long and hard on how to trick the massive serpent, whose wisdom matched his size. One morning, Anansi cut down a long, sturdy branch and began arguing with his wife in a loud voice near the riverbank where Onini lived. "I swear this branch is longer than Onini," Anansi shouted. "No, it's not. Onini is much longer," his wife countered. Hearing the commotion, Onini slithered out of the river, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. "What is this nonsense?" Onini hissed, looking at Anansi. "Oh, great Onini," Anansi said respectfully, "we were just arguing about whether this branch is longer than you. Would you mind stretching out beside it so we can settle the matter?" Onini, full of pride, agreed and stretched himself alongside the branch. Quick as a flash, Anansi tied him to the branch tightly with vines. "And now to Niam you go." Scene 5. The price of greed. Anansi delivered Osebo, Mmoboro, and Onini to Niam, who was both astonished and amused. "You have earned the stories, Anansi," Niam said. He handed Anansi a golden box containing all the stories of the world, and the moment Anansi touched it, he felt its power flow through him. He returned to his village triumphant, boasting of his new title as the keeper of all stories. But Anansi's greed did not stop there. He used his power to deceive, control, and manipulate even more ruthlessly. He tricked his friends, took advantage of his family, and hoarded his stories so that none could be told without his permission. The gods watched as Anansi's cruelty grew. His once clever tricks turned malicious, hurting those who trusted him. Finally, Niam grew tired of Anansi's abuse of power and called for a council of the gods. Scene 6. The Curse. In the heart of the sky, Niam stood before the other gods and spoke. "Anansi has become a creature of greed, spreading deceit and mischief. He no longer deserves the form of a man. Let his body reflect the web of lies he has spun." With that, Niam transformed Anansi into a spider, his limbs long and thin, his body small and fragile. His web, once made of words, became a physical web, spun from silk to trap those who fell for his tricks. Niam, however, did not take back the stories. Anansi, even in his spider form, remained the keeper of stories, but now he had to live with the consequences of his actions. Scene 7. Anansi's Redemption. In his new form, Anansi scurried through the world, weaving his webs. But over time, he learned that even as a spider, he could use his cleverness for good. He began sharing the stories he had hoarded, and with each one, he brought wisdom and laughter back to the people. One day, as he spun a web in the corner of a house, a young girl sat beneath him, listening to one of his tales. She laughed, and Anansi felt something he hadn't in a long time. Joy not from trickery, but from the happiness he gave others. From that day on, though still a trickster, Anansi balanced his cunning with kindness. He remained a spider, forever weaving webs, but now his webs held both stories of wisdom and laughter, just as much as they held those of mischief and deceit. For more stories like this, turn on your notification button and subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Tales of the Mirror Queen. The Yendi.